Welcome to Loving God and Loving Life. In 2 Corinthians 12, we find the theme being the Lord giving Paul two things. Number one, a weakness, and number two, the grace to overcome it. And we also see Paul's concern for the church. Here we have in this chapter one of the more famous verses out of this chapter, that my grace is sufficient for you. Hopefully you've heard that verse, my grace is sufficient. God's grace is sufficient. Hopefully that's a term that you use. And it is. It is sufficient. Well, it's in this context of Paul has been revealing the amazing struggles that he's gone through. And he realized that in that list, he's also revealed some things that could kind of exalt him. He goes on and he says here in the 7th verse that even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God, because in the list of everything that Paul has he's been given this long list of sacrificial things that he's done, how he's laid his life down, but he also included some, God gave him a vision. He gives those details, and he says that, because God has given him some of these amazing visions and revelations, and God has spoken to him in such clear fashion, well, he said that to keep me from becoming proud. Now, catch this. Paul says, to keep me from becoming what these other ministers, this whole book he's been talking about these other ministers who came in who are just so proud of their accomplishments. Paul says, God is so against that to keep me from becoming proud, God, he says, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. And then he goes on, he says 3 different times, I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. Paul got to the spot where he realized that God had intentionally given him a weakness. He doesn't reveal exactly what that weakness or problem. Some say it was a physical problem. Others say it was an emotional problem. Some say it was a whatever. Bottom line, we knew that it was the devil coming against him. But Paul clearly, as can be, says that God is allowing this devil. God's allowing him to kind of poke at him here. God is allowing Satan through to poke him. And Paul prayed, God, take this thing away. God said, you know what? This weakness keeps you coming back to me. Friends, please, so often we do this. The very thing, the very need, the very problem, the very thing that keeps us going back to God, the very thing that keeps us on our the very need and weakness that keeps us needing God, we want to get rid of it. And what Paul's revealing here is that Jesus is saying, you know what? I'm not going to take that thing away. It's the very thing that's keeping you dependent on me. It's the very thing that keeps your prayer life. Maybe the only reason you're tuning into this devotional is because there's a need in your life right now. Well, be thankful for it. Be thankful for it. Be thankful that it's driving you to God, because his grace is sufficient. His grace is sufficient to get you through that weakness and that need and that trouble. His grace is sufficient to lift you up and to bless your life. Don't worry about running from every trouble, or don't worry that God hasn't fixed every problem just like that. He's going to let some of them remain, and they're going to drive you back to God, and you're going to find that God's grace gets you through, gets you over, gets you around, keeps picking you up. His grace is sufficient for us, friends, even in our weaknesses. God, thank you for grace that is sufficient. God, give us the grace today. Send us one person today to share your love with. Friends, I hope we never forget it. It's that life. It's that life of sacrificial service, of loving God, that it ends up being the life that we love.